So today I'm taking you through my monthly budget routine from start to finish, basically from the first number I write down to me closing out my month. And as you may already know, when it comes to budgeting and my personal finances in general, I don't like complexity. I don't like things to be confusing or overly complex. I like simplicity. And so I need my budget to be realistic and flexible. And I'm going to be sharing with you exactly the way I approach my budgeting each month. And hopefully you can find that useful and implementing it into your budget approach as well. Hey everyone, my name is Bola Shokunbi. I'm the founder and CEO of Clever Finance. I'm also the author of the Clever Finance book series, the book Choosing to Prosper, and the Clever Girl Finance workbook called My Wealth Plan. Welcome to Clever Finance TV. So let's get into my monthly budgeting routine. Step one, I always review last month's numbers. Before I look ahead, I always look back to see how things went with the budget I had for the previous month. I do a quick, honest review of my budget and I try not to guilt myself because there's no point in crying over what didn't work out. And I look at it to determine trends for a general assessment to see how I do with my money goals, where my money went, and to determine what I can do better the next month. And so I look at my income to see if it was what I expected it to be, right? I look at my actual versus my budgeted income. I look at my total spending on bills, essentials, and non-essentials. And I ask myself if I overspent anywhere. And then I look at the actual savings and investments I made. What progress did I make? And for someone who might be paying off debt, this is where you would review your debt repayments. If anything unexpected came up during the month that I didn't plan for, like a car repair, or I needed to buy an unplanned birthday trip or go to an unplanned dinner, etc., I make a note of it. And then I try to reflect on if it was something that I could have controlled or if I could have planned for it better. And I use this assessment and review to make adjustments for my budget for the month coming up. Number two, I map out my income. So the next thing I do is really take a look at how much I plan to be working with income-wise for this upcoming month. So how much money am I going to be bringing in? And so for me as a business owner who runs a media company and who also has side hustles from, my books, I get book royalties, I do speaking engagements, I teach workshops, etc., my income is not always consistent. And so the first thing I will do is list out all of my expected income. So this is the salary I pay myself, any book royalties I might be getting, any already previously booked speaking engagements that I have been paid for recently. I will list all that income down. I will also try to estimate anything irregular that I know might be coming in. So income from my side hustles. And because my income is not always consistent, when I am laying out my income that I plan to be working with, I base it on the lowest amount. So what I expect that I know I'm actually going to get in the event that I don't get paid on time for a side hustle, for example, or my book royalties are lower than expected for one period versus another. I base on what my lowest average income is so that I don't have, as I plan my budget, I don't have any gaps or I don't find myself in a position where I don't have the money to cover what I have budgeted for. And this also gives me a clearer picture of what I can realistically allocate across my different budget categories. Step number three, once I have done this, reviewed my last month's budget and mapped out my income from this upcoming month, the next thing I do is plan to pay myself first. And this is essentially putting money towards my financial goals. This is not paying myself a salary. This is not tied to my income. Paying myself first essentially means putting money that I have earned, my income, putting money towards my financial goals first. That's what I mean by paying myself first. So I'm prioritizing my contributions to savings, to my long-term savings, my midterm savings, putting money in my emergency savings account, and also money for investing for my future self, retirement savings, and even my non-retirement investments. And the reason why I pay myself first and the advice I give to everyone is because knowing myself, knowing Bola, if I choose to pay all my bills first and save later, I will save nothing. So I really try to prioritize paying myself first every month. And the way I prioritize this is by automating as much as I can when it comes to money that goes towards my savings and my investments. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, tell your best girlfriends about Clever Wealth Finance. And if you're looking for a guide to support you, a tool to support you in creating your own personalized financial plan and laying out a budget that is going to work for you, check out the Clever Wealth Finance workbook called My Wealth Plan. This will help you lay out all your financial goals, help you create a financial plan for yourself, help you create a budget that will work for you, and you can start to work and implement everything in this workbook on an ongoing basis to help you achieve your financial goals. Also, be sure to check out the Clever Girls Know podcast hosted by me. Everywhere you listen to your podcast episodes, I interview incredible guests on all kinds of things, from saving to investing, how they have achieved big milestones, to paying off debts, to entrepreneurship, and so much more. And then be sure to stop by cleverwealthfinance.com and check out our content on our website. We have tons of articles and also our over 30 plus completely free courses and our over 40 plus completely free worksheets. Okay, let's get back to the video. Step number 4, I review my spending categories and I make sure that I have set realistic spending categories for that month. So once my goals are covered, I've paid myself first, now it's time for me to look at my expenses and go over my budget to ensure I'm able to cover all of my expenses for that month. I break my expenses down into my fixed expenses. So these are the expenses I know that they're not going to change. They are the same amount pretty much every month. So things like certain home expenses, mortgage, utilities, certain subscriptions, I know that these fixed expenses are not changing. They're going to be the same. So I confirm those in my budget based on what I get paid. And then I review my variable expenses and I try to estimate as best as I can based on my historical spending and based on what I know is coming up to make sure that I'm planning accordingly for these variable expenses. So variable expenses for me would include things like groceries, right? So am I having guests over, or do we have guests staying with us that month? This will determine whether or not I adjust my grocery bill. Are we traveling? Maybe that means we're spending less on groceries this month. That's a variable expense that I would adjust. Gas, household supplies, summer camp expenses, one-off summer camp expenses for my kids, and things like that. Those are the variable expenses that I will try my best to estimate and plan for as I lay out my budget. And then I also have a category for flexible spending and fun spending, because I'm a huge advocate for treating yourself as you work so hard for your money. So I have a category in my budgets built in for dining out, for getting my hair done, for if I decide to get the occasional manicure. I typically paint my nails myself, and things like that. Just things that make me feel good and happy, and money that I can spend on things guilt-free. And then as I set my spending categories, I also ask myself a few questions. Are there any opportunities for me to cut back this month, right? Is there stuff that I don't need to spend money on this month that is not important or not a priority and not an essential? I also ask myself, am I subscribed to something that I don't use? So I have been someone who has been caught up in all kinds of subscriptions. One thing I should here on this channel is that I found out that I was paying for a Disney Plus subscription twice for 2 years. So they were charging me 2 times a month for 24 months, and it took me the longest time to catch it. And so one thing I'm very particular about is paying attention to my subscriptions, old subscriptions, new subscriptions. Am I using them? Do I need them? Should I cancel them? I ask myself those questions every single month. And then finally, I ask myself, okay, Bola, based on your spending behavior last month, do you need to do a no spend weekend or a no spend week to reset and recalibrate, especially if I found myself impulse spending or overspending? And doing this helps me spend intentionally and minimize my random spending behavior. So number 5, I plan for any irregular or seasonal expenses. And so I look at my calendar and I ask myself, are there any upcoming events or expenses that I need to accommodate for in my budget? For example, birthday, holiday spending, vacation spending, one-off things for my kids. I try to look at the calendar for that month and determine if there are going to be any of those one-time expenses that are irregular that I need to accommodate for in that monthly budget. Also, seasonal expenses, summer camp expenses, for example, or, Thanksgiving, if we're hosting Thanksgiving, a lot of people are coming over to my home for dinner, then I have to plan, spending money on a big meal. So I try to accommodate and determine how much of those I'm going to have so I can build it into my budget as well. And what I've found over time is that just doing that little planning, that little forecasting has helped me avoid going over budget or blowing up my budget because I just didn't plan adequately for an expense I knew was coming up. So obviously there are expenses that we don't know are going to come up. Like that's why we have emergency savings. That's why I'm an advocate of putting money towards your emergency savings every month and building that as a line item into your budget to cover those unexpected expenses. But sometimes there are expenses that we know are coming, but we don't adequately plan for them. And so by doing this little planning and forecasting, it has really helped me tremendously to be able to accommodate those irregular expenses without feeling like, oh my God, my budget is going to blazes. Number 6, I track my budget weekly, not daily. And so I used to be someone who tracked the budget every day. I would spend like 20 minutes looking at my budget, going through my budget, but I started feeling like it was a chore and it wasn't fun or exciting. And then I would skip days and skip weeks and just find that, you know what, Bola, you haven't looked at your budget at all. What is happening? And so what I do is I still check in on my spending every day. I just check my account to make sure that, okay, this transaction went through, this bill went through. But instead, I look at my budget spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet girl. I look at the spreadsheet every week to make sure I'm on track or see where I need to adjust if I am falling off track with my budget. So my budget deep dive, I do it every week. I don't do it once a month because I feel like that's too much time to elapse before you check in with your budget. And so I try to look at my budget once a week. Obviously, I create my budget for the month, but when it comes to checking in, I'm looking at it on a weekly basis. And so what I will do is I will track my spending on my spreadsheet once a week. I keep my receipts. My bag is always full of receipts, and so is my inbox, depending on what I'm paying for. I do a quick category check. So I look at my spending categories, my budget categories, and say, okay, what's over, what's under, and I make my mental notes and things I need to adjust. And then if something is off or incorrect or out of whack, I adjust it in that weekly review as opposed to waiting until I create my next month budget to catch it before it's too late. And so this weekly check-in versus daily check-in for me helps me stay accountable, and it helps me avoid feeling like budgeting is a full-time job. And then number 7, at the end of the month, I will close out my month and I will reflect. So I will look at my budget holistically for that entire month and see how I did, what I didn't do well, similar to what I do in the beginning where I review my past month's budget. I will close out this month, make sure that all the bills were paid, make sure that all the transactions went through as expected, and then I'll reflect on the month. How did you do your spending this month, Bola? How did you do with your budget? I will think about it, make notes. I'm a huge on journaling. I will journal, and then I will work on creating my next month's budget. And so in this closeout, specifically what I do when I'm looking back at this month is I'm looking at my actual income versus what I budgeted. How much did I actually bring in that month? I'm going to look at all my spending. Where did my money go? What did I spend it on? Why was I spending in this way? And then I will look at my investments to make sure that I was saving and investing as I planned. And if I didn't, what happened? Was there an extra bill that caused that to happen? Did I forget? Did I overspend? What caused me not to invest as much? And then I will celebrate my wins, even the small ones. I paid my bills on time. I met my investment goals. I met my savings goals. I didn't let my kids corner me into buying things they didn't need. I celebrate all those little wins, and I actually write down my wins in my notes app on my phone, especially when it comes to things that I'm really proud of or things that I wanted to keep track of that I did well. I write it down so I have a way to reflect on what I did well. And then I take note of what didn't work out so that I can adjust accordingly for the next month. So that is it. That is my simple monthly budgeting routine. There is not a lot to it, but this is what has allowed me to stay on top of my finances, is what has kept me focused on my goals, making sure that I pay my bills on time, I'm saving and investing. And over the long term, this simplified way of budgeting for me has helped me build long-term wealth. And so when it comes to creating your own budget, whatever method you pick, whether it's the percentage-based method, cash envelope method, reverse budgeting method, you want to build it into a routine where you are taking specific steps to help you achieve your budgeting goals. So you're checking in on your budget, you're reviewing your prior month's budgeting, you're looking at your spending categories, you're paying yourself first, and all of that to make sure that you're actually staying on top of your budget. And one key thing, which I mentioned earlier, is you don't want your budget to feel like a punishment or a chore. So find a cadence, find a time frame to check in more frequently than once a month. So maybe every week, every 3 days, bi-weekly, where you can check in on your budget, but it doesn't feel like a burden for you to do. My budget is not fancy, it's not rigid. I have built in flexibility and it helps me stay consistent and on top of my financial goals. Remember, you do not need to have a perfect budget. You just need one that fits into your lifestyle and one that you're actively going to use. And also remember that your budget is a living document that can be adjusted as your life changes, as your income changes, as your spending categories changes. It is not one thing. It's not something that is set forever. You want to be able to adjust this. It's a tool that is working for you because you're leveraging your budget to tell your money what to do for you. So tell me in the comments, what steps are you going to be taking to improve your own budget, or what is your own current budgeting routine? I would love to know. Thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you next time.